Joining us now is Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma. Senator, welcome back.
Hey, Brian, great to be with you.
I mean, it's like you must be feeling like you're standing in front of a fire hose right now in terms of the amount of information that's coming at you.
There's a tremendous amount of information coming at us, and a lot of things we're trying to work through, both with nominations and process. But on the Intel committee, we're dealing with a lot of issues right now.
You're on the Select Committee on Intelligence in the House, in the Senate, and when you deal with that, I was stunned by the news, and I'm hoping it's not true, in the Wall Street Journal today that the intelligence community has let it be known they're not fully briefing the president.
Yeah, I read that same thing as well. We've continued to be able to push. When I had multiple meetings with leadership in the Intel committee from the previous administration, that was one of my prime questions, is to be able to make sure not only the transition is going well, but they're getting full information to the president. The president has to have full access to all information, whatever he needs, because he's got to make tough decisions on it. And they can't sit back and say, we don't have that. Now, do I think it's the majority? No. I think the vast majority of the intelligence community are giving all their information. But if there are even some, that means giving some limited information.
So I'm wondering, this whole thing with Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. Obviously, he is a very blunt-speaking guy. He gets under people's skin. He's was an outstanding military officer for years, an intelligence officer. He's lauded by McChrystal as well as Petraeus, everybody that worked with him, Odierno. So, what do you think was the problem? Why did he create such turmoil?
Well, he's a patriot. No doubt he's a patriot, served his country in an incredible way for a long time. But at the end of the day, he didn't tell the vice president and the president the truth. He was asked a direct question. He told them something that was factually incorrect. And then later he came back. So you lose trust. As a three-star general before, he knows he counts on everyone below to tell them the truth, tell them the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And if at any point you don't get that, then that's a problem. So for the president to come back and say, hey, I need an advisor that I know is going to tell me the truth every single time, don't blame him for that. But I hate that diminishes a very, very decorated history and record that he's had.
Evidently, this is what Fox News is reporting, Catherine Herridge, that one of the reasons, and this might play into the Wall Street Journal story, government official tells Fox News that President Trump has been receiving his presidential daily briefing, noting that it does not routinely include raw data. However, Mike Flynn wanted to pull together overnight intelligence reporting, including raw data, for the president to review, and this may explain the many roadblocks that he faces and why the president's facing it now, because they're getting bent out of shape. I get the sense, Senator, and again, I'm in New York, you're in Washington, you're on the Intelligence Committee, I'm not. But that the intelligence community has disdain for what's left on the Obama administration, have disdain for this president, and they're not interested in working with him. In fact, they're looking to be subversive.
Well, there's two things, Brian. My understanding is the president has asked for faster, more information on more topics, but in more succinct ways, that it's not as long of a document. It would give me the hardcore facts on it. That means you're going to pull some of the raw data out and give some of the conclusions. The president should have access to, and the National Security Advisor should have access to all the raw data that they want. And so what typically happens in a meeting like that is they're going to go through a lot of different regions, a lot of different issues, answer the questions, and then the president would say, I need the background information on this, and the next day it shows up and they've got all the background. That's not inappropriate. Most of the folks in the intelligence community are career people. They weren't just hired for the Obama administration. They worked over several administrations, and they're folks that are very engaged and very faithful to do it. If there are individuals that are trying to pull back, we need to be able to encourage those folks to be able to lean in, which we will. And that is to say, you cannot withhold any information for the president that he wants. Any information that he needs, he's got to have, because at the end of the day, a lot of foreign policy issues and how we handle the battlefield comes down to the commander-in-chief.
So, Senator Lankford now of Oklahoma, who's on the Select Intelligence Committee over in the Senate. Senator, there was a report out today in the New York Times, not denied, I believe the source was the Trump administration, that they're looking to take the co-founder of Cerberus, Stephen Feinberg, and oversee the intelligence community, essentially do an audit, find out what programs are costing a lot, what kind of information they're yielding, what kind of intelligence they're bringing forward. And this has just caused a consternation in the upper levels of the intelligence agency, the CIA, the DIA. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that one I'm not going to get a chance to walk through on. I would tell you every agency in the federal government should be open to an audit. should be able to open to an examination. CIA just went through a pretty intensive top-to-bottom examination on it. We have a lot of different intelligence organizations, both in national defense, in the Department of Defense, and then outside in the civilian side as well, that they do a lot of great work for us. Again, these are men and women that work every single day. They dress like you and I do, and we never know who they are, but they do incredible, heroic, patriotic work. But there's still oversight that is needed. One of the things that we work on the Intelligence Committee is to say all these different folks have got to be able to play together. That's the role, basically. Dan Coates, who is the president's TAP for the Director of National Intelligence, that is one of his prime responsibilities, is coordination among all of these different intel agencies. So you haven't got three intel agencies basically doing the same thing, wasting American taxpayers' money and slowing down the process.
Where is Coates? Is Coates confirmed?
Coates is not confirmed yet. He's going through the process. He will be confirmed. He has tremendous respect on both sides of the aisle, and there's not going to be an issue with confirming him, but he is not confirmed yet. In fact, the only one that's been confirmed in the intelligence group so far has been Mike Pompeo. As you know, the Democrats have had historic obstruction as they walk through this. No party has ever blocked the cabinet officials and slowed down the process like what has happened now. This is the slowest confirmation process since George Washington, when they were first trying to figure out how to do confirmation, and it took people coming by horseback to be able to get here to go through the confirmation process. But they've been very, very slow in trying to drag everything out.
Which is unacceptable for any administration. But what about the plethora of leaks? I mean, we know 3 intimate phone conversations with world leaders, Vladimir Putin, Australia, and a couple of others. How did that get out? And how did the Mike Flynn information get out? Who green-lighted the Mike Flynn wiretap from the NSA? Do we need to know any of this?
Absolutely, we need to know that. Yeah, that's 2 different sets of issues. One is when you're dealing with State Department folks, there's a reasonable question to be able to say who in the world is leaking out private conversations the president has with other world leaders. If someone that's left over from the previous administration, that political group, or if some individual that's a career person is leaking this out, that is not appropriate, and it shuts down all of our conversation with every world leader, because no world leader have blunt conversations with our president because they're afraid it's going to leak out. So that destroys our foreign policy. On the Mike Flynn piece of it, there's 2 different sets of things that are illegal in that. One, it is not legal to be able to wiretap an American citizen. Now, the statement has been that this was a tap on the Russians. It's no grand secret that we're trying to listen in on everything the Russians are doing so that we can be able to gain information. But on the flip side of that is, if that transcript that has the name of an American citizen is leaked out, or that transcript at all is leaked out, that is an illegal act. And that is something that absolutely needs to be followed up on. That's one of the things the intelligence community has started to be able to find out where that leak came from, what was their motivation for being able to put that leak out there, and then to be able to prosecute an individual if they're leaking out secrets that are classified documents. This is no different than any other administration.
And by the way, as somebody I know you respect is Congressman Devin Nunes, who's on the intelligence side. In the House side, this is what he said last night to Sean Hannity, cut 15.
It's totally unacceptable for anyone within government to be doing this. Now, I think most of this is probably from people who were in the old administration, but there still could be some people that have burrowed in and are providing classified information to the media.
You agree with either of those things, or both?
I do actually, but this is still all the recordings that are out there and the releases of those transcripts were all things that were done before the Trump administration took their leadership on the 20th of January. And so there's no question that the recordings were done in the old administration. There's no question that transcripts were made from the old administration. The question is, who leaked it out? And it is our understanding that this was starting to trickle out before the swearing in even occurred. That would tell me old administration is the one that was targeting the new.
Do you believe that there was substantial contacts between the Trump people and the Russian officials prior to the election?
And we're trying to find out context. By the way, it's not inappropriate for a new government to have contacts with a future relationship that they're going to have. So that doesn't concern me. It's kind of the nature of it and what they were trying to do. The accusation on Flynn is that he was trying to undercut the sanctions for Russia, where there's no evidence for that that's out there. But for a future person, for the State Department or for the National Security Advisor, especially those that are immediately around the president, to have some conversation with world leaders, not inappropriate. The accusations are flying out there, which are unsubstantiated, that somehow that they had contacts with the Russians, they were in coordination. And what all of my liberal friends are trying to do is to say that if it wasn't for the Russian interference, Trump would have never been elected. And quite frankly, Brian, I hope they keep on that line and keep doing it, because then they won't admit it was actually their policies and the things that they did for the last 8 years that the American people had turned off. If they somehow believe that it was only the Russians, if it wasn't for the Russians, we would have won,
right.
Then they won't pay attention to serious mistakes that they've made in trying to do Obamacare and Dodd-Frank and so many issues that the American people have rejected.
All right, real quick, two quick topics. We're up against the break, and you got to run. Scott Pruitt, a guy you know very well from Oklahoma, the Attorney General. Where is he in getting confirmed?
Scott Pruitt will be confirmed either late tonight or tomorrow by midday. So by 3 o'clock tomorrow Eastern time, we will have a new leader for the EPA.
Any Republican defections?
Susan Collins has stepped out and said that she is not going to support him, but we'll pick up several Democrats as well. When you're talking about Scott Pruitt, you're talking about someone who will follow the law. His focus as the Attorney General was to not only protect our air and our water and our environment, but also to protect the consumer. You can do both. You don't have to arbitrarily drive up costs for things that don't really make a difference.
You met with Judge Gorsuch yesterday. What was your impression?
It was a positive impression meeting with Judge Gorsuch. I've done a lot of reading on his background, his opinions and such. We had a very frank conversation, a lot of issues about separation of powers, about federalism, about the role of the courts, what the courts should do and should not do. And it was a good conversation. As you know, Brian, these are always a dance when you have these conversations, because I'm going to ask as specific a question as I can, and he can't answer anything that's related to a future case, because if he does, then he has to recuse himself in that case. And so it's this strange dance to be able to go through it. But it was a very good conversation, actually.
Few work harder at their job than Senator Lankford. And, Senator, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian.